It's the Draft Fellows coming at you live. Kyle and Andrew breaking down the drive. Prospects to roster, we got the flow. First round picks to the ones you don't know. Talk about the combine, skills on display. Who's rising up and who's falling away. Roster building like a GM in the zone. Kyle Fellows, Andrew Mertig, they own the phone.
Hey, welcome back to the Draft Fellows podcast. I'm Andrew Mertig. That's Kyle Fellows. Together we are the Draft Fellows. Make sure you're checking out our channel on YouTube or the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. Kyle, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing really good. We are back with another review of what happened in the NFL draft, and we're on to the AFC part of that conversation. And so I'm looking forward to this. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, I had a lot of fun going through the NFC, and honestly, in the chaos of what happened in the draft, and then like sort of the aftermath, and me leaving the country for 2 weeks, I forgot a lot of the cumulative, nature of some of these draft classes. So it's fun to see some of the late round players and where they fit together, and how teams are going to be able to plug some of these folks in. And so we are on to the AFC. And first up, we are going to start with the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills. And in the first round at pick 30, the Bills take cornerback Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. In the second round, they get defensive lineman TJ Sanders from South Carolina. And in the third, edge Landon Jackson from Arkansas.
So I know that this is not a Packers podcast, right? Of course, we're Packers fans, not a Packers podcast. But this Bills draft is a lot like what I thought the Packers draft class would actually end up looking like. And so I'm really familiar with the top of this class because I thought a lot of these players had a chance to be Packers, because the Green Bay kind of has this tendency to not only target high RAS type players, but also high upside players. Like if they hit, they're going to hit big, and that doesn't always work out, but they shoot for those guys with a really high ceiling. And this is that kind of a draft class for Buffalo with just huge ceiling kind of players. Max Hairston was a player that I really came to love late in the process. He has the swagger that you love to see from an elite corner. The aggressive play style is there. If you go back to 2023 in that tape, he's just a human highlight reel with pass breakups and interceptions, and 24 wasn't as good, but he did have the shoulder injury, which I think explains some of the regression as a tackler that's documented there. But if he can stay healthy and if his body can hold up with the physical brand of football that he likes to play, I think he's going to be great. The other one that jumps out to me here was Landon Jackson, and he was a weird evaluation for me. He's 6'7", just so long, and usually we're all about pass rushers that have that length. But in Jackson's case, he really struggles with winning the leverage game as a pass rusher. He's not the most explosive guy, and he's not above average as someone who can bend. But he is big, and he's long, and he does good work in the run game, and has all the athleticism in the world to develop into more than that once he's in the league. So Landon Jackson, kind of an interesting case because he's a really fun ball of clay that I think the Bills are going to have a lot of fun getting to mold.
Yeah, and with Maxwell Hairston, I mean, there's some off the field stuff, and we won't get into that because we don't know anything about it. And I think that probably dropped him a little bit in this class, but there's some other intangible stuff that you have to like, and that was very well documented in the draft. So kind of a mixed bag, but we do know Sean McDermott is going to want corners who are physical and can tackle. And Hairston, to me, that was his big knock. Like he was a striker. And that may have resulted in the shoulder injury, quite honestly. And so if McDermott can get him to wrap a little bit better, I know size can be a limitation, but this is a guy who is super athletic, super good ball skills. I think he's somebody that Bills fans are really going to like in that secondary and sort of be the replacement at starter, as a starter on the outside at corner where the Bills really need some help. And yeah, I was also going to talk about Landon Jackson because he's the most Bills prospect to ever Bills. Like they liked AJ Epinesa. They liked Gregory Rousseau. They love these huge, really long, tall edge rushers that can kick inside when necessary. And we'll see where Jackson lands kind of in that spectrum, right? Epinesa hasn't quite lived up to what they were hoping, but they have a type, and Landon Jackson certainly meets that. Anything in day 3 for the Bills class?
Yeah, really quick, just philosophically, got to give some love to the defensive tackle position here, even before we get too far into this, because they did take TJ Sanders and Dayon Walker. I don't know if it's, I always think I'm saying his first name wrong, but the defensive lineman from Kentucky got both of these guys relatively early in the draft. So I think it just speaks to an emphasis that the Bills wanted to put on fixing the defense. And Sanders is, I think, going to be a great player. He was someone who steadily improved over the course of his college career. His athleticism and explosiveness are both top end traits. So suited for that penetrating style defensive tackle role. And it's reasonable to think that I think his best football is ahead of him. But just wanted to throw that out there, that they spent a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick on the defensive line. So definitely an emphasis that they wanted to make there. And then I guess if I'm going to dip into day 3, for me, it's probably Dorian Strong, the cornerback that they took from Virginia Tech. Just a corner with good length and instincts. He's not a complete prospect. He has some holes in his game. But in the 6th round, I thought he was probably more of like a late 4 or a 5th round pick. And so I think they got a little bit of value there in what Dorian Strong can become.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight 2 players, actually. Their 5th round pick, Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech, who is basically, if you took Bills legend Lee Smith and just like edited his age on Madden back to like early 20s, Jackson Hawes is a force in the blocking game. Now, he is not going to provide much in the passing, pass reception game, but this is a 6 offensive lineman. And then conveniently enough, in the 6th round, they take offensive tackle Chase Lunt out of UConn. And Lunt is probably a 1st or 2nd round pick if he doesn't have T-Rex arms. And so you say, okay, well, like, how does an offensive tackle with tiny arms make it in the NFL? Well, the Bills play more 6 offensive linemen than anybody in the league. And Lunt is perfect for that role. You don't need to have huge, long arms to be the 6th player. And so goal line, I'm telling you right now, good luck to opposing defenses with Hawes, Lunt, their 5 offensive linemen, and then you have to tackle Josh Allen. Like, you're done. Oh, and by the way, they have big physical receivers on the outside who can block. So that to me is fun. That's like specializing players that you can afford to do when you're one of the best teams in the league on day 3. So we're going to jump over the Miami Dolphins, and at pick 13, they're going to take defensive lineman Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. In the 2nd round, they get offensive lineman Jonah Savanaia out of Arizona. I've been practicing.
Yeah, it's good. I'm proud of you. Yeah, no, Kenneth Grant, we kind of talked about like how high will Kenneth Grant go, because those big defensive tackles who aren't primarily penetrating pass rush types, they don't always go super high, right? I think 13 overall was a huge success. If you're Grant, I think 12 to the 49ers was kind of his ceiling. So I think he went in a great spot for him to make the most money there in the 1st round, but a great player who can become even more dynamic as a pass rusher, I think. But he is 1000% going to be a huge asset in the run game. And he's young, 21 years old, and it would not shock me that much at all if he ends up outplaying his Michigan teammate Mason Graham in the NFL and just what he's going to be able to provide in the NFL game. Jonah, I make fun of you, but now I'm not going to be able to do it because it's been a couple months. But Sayavania, that's my best shot. I love this player. This was the guy that I just kind of fell in love with, that I was like late 2nd, early 3rd round pick. Just thought he was going to be huge value, but he played all over the offensive line in college. Right tackle, left tackle, played at guard, and he's going to play inside in the NFL. And I think staying in one spot is actually going to help him tremendously, just to get comfortable and stay there and grow into that position. He's got a nasty streak, and he loves blocking for the run game, which you love to hear. I think he's going to thrive inside and is a perfect combo of strength and mobility for what the Dolphins like to do with a lot of zone blocking things. So he was the guy that, like, when he went off the board, I was like, I was wishing he was on my team, but absolutely a steal for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and with a player like Kenneth Grant, it's funny to me that my mock drafts in February were probably more accurate than my ones in April. And I think a player like Grant or a player like Kelvin Banks Jr., like, these are lessons to be learned, that oftentimes it's the media that is creating this noise between February and April, and not as much the teams. And so maybe you need to take a step back and look where players are. To me, my comp for Kenneth Grant was Christian Wilkins. So it's interesting that he ends up with the Dolphins,
Mhm.
like a year removed from losing Wilkins in free agency. And yeah, I think this is the guy is going to be an elite level run stuffer and then has the potential to add in the pass rush game. And if he does that, you're going to be really, really happy with him at 13. If he never develops, you're going to be a little disappointed in just getting, a first and second down player. But
Yeah.
I think the upside is really fantastic. And I think Savanaia is a probably day one starter for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of offensive line problems last year because they lost so many players via free agency. And I think this is a plug and play kind of guy, and really, really like him sliding inside to guard and being an impact player there. Anybody on day 3 you want to shout out?
Yeah, so interesting. Like Quinn Ewers went here, and I'm not really going to talk about Quinn Ewers a lot, but like the fit there with the Dolphins, like they kind of have a revolving door of who's playing quarterback. It feels like from week to week with injuries and those kinds of things. But this is a place where you could actually see Ewers get onto the field, maybe not as a starter, but like it's an interesting fit for him. And then Ollie Gordon is actually the player that I was going to talk about here. He's just a player that a lot of people thought would go higher than this after the 2023 season. And then, of course, like stocks change and like he didn't have as good of a 24. But the Dolphins have a type. They like speed at running back and they just kind of clone those guys, right? So like Mostert was there. He's gone now. But they have Achane, they have Jalen Wright to fill that mold. So I like that they did something different here, right? Like Gordon gives them someone who's 6'1", 225 pounds to pound the rock with if they want to do that. So just a little bit of a change of pace from what we've seen them do with the running backs in the past. And in the 6th round, like I feel like that's pretty good value.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to go with Gordon as well. And, 2 years ago, it looked like this was the next Derrick Henry. And then this year, he kind of falls off the map. And so with these like taller, bigger, more physical running backs, there's kind of a spectrum in the current NFL. You have Derrick Henry, who, of course, is the elite of the elite. You have Braylon Allen that's kind of in the middle. And then you have modern A.J. Dillon. And that's not to knock A.J. because he had a really fantastic second year in the NFL, but he's kind of slipped since then. And so where can Gordon fit in there? We know the Dolphins want kind of a workhorse back and take a little pressure off of Devon Achane. And so can Gordon provide that? And that is really interesting and an opportunity to, be productive early in his career. And I give Quinn Ewers a lot of crap leading up into the draft. But as a 7th round pick, I do like taking a risk on that upside. It probably doesn't work out, but neither do most 7th round picks. And so if you can get him in and develop some of those skills, maybe you have something there that you can work with. So now we're going to transition over a really big draft class with the New England Patriots, but at 4 overall, they're going to take offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU. In the 2nd round, they get running back Travion Henderson of Ohio State, and then 2 3rd-round picks, wide receiver Kyle Williams from Washington State and center Jared Wilson from Georgia.
Yeah, so Will Campbell is a player that I liked, but I liked him a lot. I just didn't like him as much as maybe consensus and not as much as the Patriots did, of course, taking him where they did. But I am so glad that the Patriots invested in the offensive line and made an effort to help support Drake May in that way, because you just don't want to go into the second year, sophomore year of a quarterback that came out like Drake May did and showed so much progress, but then not support him in a way that gives him the time to develop. You don't want to give him the yips like, early in his career because he never has time to throw the ball. So I love that they made that investment. And I think Will Campbell was worth that pick, especially in this draft class. And then Travion Henderson, like a super fun addition for the offense. And the Patriots needed playmakers. I think a lot of people thought that would come in the form of wide receivers, but getting someone like Henderson to kind of be that safety outlet for Drake May can definitely be the guy who can break the play from closer to the line of scrimmage and really be that outlet for Drake May and give him that safety blanket that he needs there as kind of a different kind of an offensive playmaker than a wide receiver for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you on Campbell. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that Armand Membu is up for the Jets. And that was my OT1. And just a little bit more of the ideal body type that you'd like. Campbell's wingspan gives me a lot of concern. But you have to love the way he talks about football. You have to love the way he played at LSU. And so Mike Vrabel does have some pretty good success with offensive linemen. And I think, you give him all the trust that he is going to, allow Will Campbell to be that blindside protector for Drake May. And yeah, Travion Henderson was one of my favorite players. I thought he might go first round, maybe like middle first round. I was that optimistic about his skill set.
Yeah.
Super happy the Patriots kept him out of Chicago. And yeah, he is a fun accent to Ramondre Stevenson.
Yes.
I think that's going to make that backfield really dynamic. Looking at day 3, I'm going to go first here. I'm just going to shout out edge Braden Swinson, another LSU guy. I think that's a fun, high upside edge rusher. And if you look at what Tennessee was able to do when they were coached by Mike Vrabel, there's a lot of these like mid-round, late-round edge rushers that they were able to get the most out of. And Swinson has a lot of tools in the toolbox. He just hasn't quite put it together yet. So I love that as a developmental player, and getting him in the 5th round is fun.
I'm glad you brought up Swinson, because he was the player that I didn't put in the doc here that I was going to talk about, but kind of wanted to. He's just the player that I really liked throughout the process. But as I worked through the edges, he just kept dropping a little bit lower and a little bit lower down my rankings. But I liked him more than I could measure him, if that makes any sense. And so I think he is a player that has a chance to definitely be a better college or better pro player than he did in college. And I think there was questions about like, why did his production wait to take off until his last year before the draft? But really, really optimistic about what he can become at the next level. The guy I want to highlight here, maybe there's 2. I know like Kyle Williams went in their 3rd round, so we're trying to get into day 3 here, but they didn't address wide receiver really early. But in the 3rd round, Kyle Williams is a player that some people really love. I like him. He is just going to be a fascinating player to watch there in New England, because he is fast as heck on the field. He only clocked a 4.42 in testing, but I think he looks faster than that on the field. But he's going to give you 2 things initially. He's going to give you the 9 route on deep balls, and he's give you some bubble screens. And that might be kind of it to start, but I think the Patriots could really benefit from those things. And again, we talked about like the high completion percentage stuff to Travion Henderson and how that can like bring an offense to life. Also, if you can get some bubble screens to the speed of Kyle Williams, I think that there are a couple different ways there that Drake May could have some success that could move the ball. So I think that's a lot of fun. I think you could get some like dollar store Jameson Williams kind of production out of Kyle Williams there. And then Joshua Farmer was the other one I wanted to bring up just really quickly. He was my defensive tackle 9 in this class, and I'm probably higher on him than a lot of people, but just a really naturally powerful player. And I think that he's a player that needs coaching to help him get better with his leverage and his pad level. And if he can do that, that should help him anchor a little bit better in the run game. But just a really fun prospect. He's a team leader there at Florida State, one of 8 kids in his family, and just a guy who's really easy to root for. But especially if he can get the anchor fixed, then I think he can be that penetrating dynamic player for this Patriots team that they could have then at that point stole in the 4th round.
Yeah, and if we were running out of time, I'd talk about 7th round pick long snapper Julian Ashby out of Vanderbilt, and all of the tape I have watched on him. But we are going to move on to the New York Jets, and at 7 overall, they take the aforementioned offensive tackle Armand Membu out of Missouri. In the 2nd round, they get tight end Mason Taylor from LSU, and in the 3rd round, they're going to take Azariah Thomas, the cornerback out of Florida State.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Membu. I think there's a real chance that Membu ends up being the best true offensive tackle in this class. I think we're probably on the same page there. And I think the Jets were really wise to try to take the long-term solution to fix their offensive line issues instead of just continuing to work on like patchwork solutions there. So I love that pick for them with Membu. And then Mason Taylor. I might be the president of the Mason Taylor fan club. Even I, though, was surprised to hear that he had 1st round buzz going into the draft. As we kind of like worked in those last couple days of the draft, there was that buzz that he was going to go in the 1st, but the 2nd feels about right. Just a really good interview, son of the pro Hall of Fame Jason Taylor, yeah, like nephew to Zach Thomas. Like the bloodlines are pretty remarkable there. Pretty kind of meh production profile at LSU, but still leaves LSU as the most accomplished tight end in program history, which I think tells you a little bit about the lack of utilization of the tight end position at LSU. So that's really just fascinating to see, like, okay, what is he going to be as he continues into the NFL? But a lot of completions, like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. He has the ability to kind of be the guy who can get the ball and then make something out of it afterwards. I kind of think I saw this, and I saw a couple other people throw out a Tucker Kraft comp. I think that there is a little bit of that in his game, and I do think he has a better chance, a chance to be a better pro than he was there at LSU, given the opportunities that he had in that offense.
Yeah, and I won't be super redundant and say exactly what you just said about everybody, but their third round pick, Azare Thomas, out of Florida State, really fantastic skill set. And so we'll see. I thought he was early second round kind of value. So to get him in the third round is fun. And then to be able to play him opposite of Sauce Gardner, that's got to be his role model. He should be following Sauce around practice every day, learning from him, because he does have that kind of upside. It's just that he hasn't put really a lot of it together. And so we don't see big, long, super fast physical corners that often, but his technique needs a ton of refinement. And so if he can figure it out, the Jets are going to have one scary cornerback duo.
Yeah.
Really, really like that. How about on day 3? Anybody sticking out to you?
Yeah, and just really quick, Azariah Thomas, I wrote down like high hipped corners always make me nervous, and that's the one
Yeah.
that I'm like, I really like the player, and in the third round, I think it's a great value. I just the movement skills, and in the NFL and how you have to respond to a little bit more speed. That's the one spot where like I was hesitant with his evaluation. But on day 3, Arian Smith, the wide receiver out of Georgia, interesting. I did not think he'd go in the 4th round. Malachi Moore, safety out of Alabama. Like I'll be honest. I did not watch Tyler Barron, the edge out of Miami, or Francisco, I can't even say his last name, the defensive lineman out of Miami. So I didn't see their 5th round picks at all. So the Jets saw a lot of talent that I did not in the lead up to the draft.
Yeah, the Jets spent a lot of time in the Southeast scouting, because basically every player outside of Membu and Missouri's in the SEC, so they would they would have seen him anyways. Malachi Moore is the one that sticks out to me a little bit, and I think he is just like a really, really solid football player. There's nothing flashy about him, but he's the kind of player that you look up in 6 years and you're like, wow, he is still in the league. He is still a starter, and he's just solid at everything. And I think something, I could see a really productive career for him, because he's just a smart football player. He's in the right spot. He makes up for maybe a lack of twitch with a lot of really good ball skills, takes good angles. And we've seen safeties like that succeed in recent years. So now we're going to jump over to the AFC North. And we have the Baltimore Ravens up first in the first round. At pick 27, they take safety Malachi Starks out of Georgia. In the second round, they get edge Mike Green from Marshall. And in the third, they're going to take offensive tackle Emory Jones Jr. from LSU.
So we let them do it again. The Ravens always get away with it. They just keep adding good players at really good value. And Malachi Starks just falls to them in the draft again, because of course he did. He's a safety in the league, got bored with him. I don't know why. His 24 wasn't as good as his 2023, but he's going to start for the Baltimore Ravens for 10 years. And it's so annoying that they just keep dropping in these incredible football players into their program there. And it just happens every year. But great player. And the marriage with the Ravens makes all the sense in the world. Mike Green fell to 59. I don't know that a lot of people saw this. This is almost certainly a combination of the off-the-field history the teams had to vet and be comfortable with, and the combination of that playing with a smaller program like Marshall and trying to evaluate the production there versus the level of competition. But there might not be a better pure pass rusher with the ability to dip and ghost under offensive tackles in this class than Mike Green. Like, he's that good at what he does. So it'll be really fascinating to see what the Ravens pull out of him and the talent that they did, were able to land there in the second round. So again, the Ravens got incredible value with their picks.
Yeah, and I think you can see Green being the replacement plan for Odafe Owe, who's a free agent after this year. And that's what the Ravens do. They do not pay edge rushers. And so, Owe will probably be really good this year, go out and get paid by somebody, and then Mike Green will step in and be really productive as that like twitchy, bendy edge. Taking a look at day 3, I didn't love a lot of what they did. But I will say I liked their 5th-round pick, Carson Vinson, the offensive lineman out of Alabama A&M. Really raw prospect, but there's some upside there. I think there's some potential ability to play at tackle, but if not, I think he's a really stout inside guy. And so I like what they did there. As a player who obviously is going to take a year to develop, but the Ravens have one of the best player development programs in the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. I put down Aeneas Peebles as my day 3 pick for the Ravens. An older prospect. He was a grad student this past year at Virginia Tech, and he is small. He's 282 pounds at the combine, but 289 at the Senior Bowl, which is a little bit more promising. Like, you can deal with 289. I know it's 7 pounds, but like 289 sounds a lot better than 282 for a defensive tackle. And he plays with a great motor, and he can impact the game as a pretty dynamic pass rusher, but he's just honestly too small to stay on the field consistently. So they just kind of have to find that role for him. I don't know how much bigger he can get, but in the 6th round, if you can get a guy who can be a situational pass rusher from the interior, like that's a shot you take all day. So I like Aeneas Peebles where they got him in the 6th.
Excellent. And we'll move over to the Cincinnati Bengals, who definitely don't have a phone line in their draft room because they always just stick and pick. Always. And so at pick 17, they take defensive lineman, as is listed here, but really edge, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. In the 2nd, they get linebacker Demetrius Knight Jr. from South Carolina. And then the 3rd, they're going to get interior offensive lineman Dylan Fairchild out of Georgia.
The Bengals are the team in your fantasy league that the owner just like never checks their messages. like they're gonna pick, and you're never gonna be able to deal a trade. So the Bengals, honestly, probably one of my least favorite classes. Probably, sorry if you're a Bengals fan. I know that's not super fun to hear. There is some good here. It's just like I didn't love the value where they got it, but that's just me. That's why like there's lots of opinions about the draft, right? I love Shamar Stewart, and I think he can be awesome. Of course, he's going to need to sign a contract with the Bengals for that to happen. So he's going to need to be able to practice for that to happen. So Cincinnati's got to figure that one out and get that deal done with him. The rest of this class, like, I don't know. Like, they took 2 linebackers. They took Demetrius Knight in the 2nd. They took Barrett Carter in the 4th. I just thought there were better players on the board in both situations. I think they kind of maybe reached for a need there a little bit. And then I'll let Andrew, like, maybe he can redeem this conversation a little bit. And then I've got a day 3 guy that I could talk about.
Yeah, well, I actually really like the Bengals class. So
okay, let's go.
It's good. We view this differently. Shamar Stewart was super high on my list. I think I had him as my 4th overall player in this class, and I know that's very, very rich. Just love the tools, love the upside. I think this is a player who, if you give him the same rookie contract that 31 other teams are going to give him, if you believe in this guy enough to draft in the 1st round, just pay him where you're supposed to, Cincy.
Then do the thing, pay the player,
get him into camp. He's a guy that does need reps, right? Like, this is all upside, but just a freak of nature athlete. I think he can be a massive disruptor opposite Trey Hendrickson, who's another guy you should probably pay. But I think this has the potential to be one of the better edge duos in the league if you can get Stewart up to speed and playing in the right way. And I think there's a lot of optimism in Cincinnati that new defensive coordinator Al Golden can do just that. But again, you got to sign the guy. At linebacker, it's interesting because the Bengals actually have a decent linebacker core, but we don't know what's happening because one of their linebackers has requested a trade. The other one, Logan Wilson, is kind of like, we don't know if he's going to be here after the season. So investing there. I was not a huge fan of Demetrius Knight Jr., to be honest. But I can see what they see because I think this is the kind of linebacker the Bengals like, which is one of the dangers in scouting from a league-wide perspective instead of a team-specific, because I think Knight's a player that you tend to overlook because the Bengals scheme their linebackers a little bit differently. And I think Dylan Fairchild is an interesting player. The Bengals need some help at the interior offensive line, and I think that's somebody that probably is going to need to be a contributor for them sooner rather than later. And then I want to hear who you like on day 3.
Yeah, Jalen Rivers, the offensive lineman for Miami, is interesting. But the one that I definitely wanted to mention was Taj Brooks, the running back from Texas Tech. And it's really, he's a tough runner with decent contact balance. And they have Chase Brown in the building, but they kind of need that complement to him. And I honestly thought, I traded away Chase Brown in a couple of dynasty leagues this year because I was convinced that the Bengals rather were going to go in a different direction at running back, and that Chase Brown was going to be kind of more of a complementary piece. But either way, like, they need someone to run alongside of him who can take more of that beating, do some of that tough running in the middle. And so I think Taj Brooks, well, maybe not like the sexiest running back pick in the whole draft, can absolutely be that for you in your offense and give you that 1-2 punch with Chase Brown. So in the 6th round, I love that. And Brooks is, a great locker room guy, 2-time captain at Texas Tech. So you're bringing in a lot of value there, I think, in the 6th round.
Yeah, and I think Brooks is a sneaky good athlete too. This is a guy who is super quick, and his straight line speed is pretty good, and so I think that's somebody that could be a little bit of, maybe he gets a few snaps here and there, and then if Brown misses any time, he could be somebody that fills in. I know they have P. Ryan, and he's gonna occupy the 3rd down snaps, but Brooks is a fun runner. His vision's not great, but I also thought that about Chase Brown too coming out. And I think that's why they slid. And I think in an offense where all of your attention as a defense is going to be focused on the outside players, maybe you can afford a little bit of that, like hit a gap and just go. And Brooks is a player that can do that. So yeah, I like that call out by you as well. We're switching over to our final 2 teams in the AFC North. First up, the Cleveland Browns, and at pick 5, they traded down for pick 2. That should be noted. And then at pick 5, they take defensive lineman Mason Graham out of Michigan. In the 2nd, they have 2 picks: linebacker Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, and then running back Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. In the 3rd round, another pair of picks: Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end of Bowling Green, and the quarterback Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon.
All right, so Andrew, we love the draft, and we love team building, and we love talking like team building strategies and all those kinds of things. So I wanted just to kind of like pause here for a second at the top of this Browns discussion and talk with you about, like, what did you think about this trade? Because they're sitting at 2, they get out of 2, and they allow the Jaguars to come up and take Travis Hunter. But then, of course, they get a player in Mason Graham here who, like, revered player, impact player on the defensive line, potentially, right? But they also gained a bunch of assets. And so I was curious, like, how did you receive this trade when it came across the board? Like, was this the Browns like screwed this up, they traded away from a premium talent in Hunter? Or is this like where, like, the Browns are not winning the Super Bowl in 2025? Like,
right,
the Browns probably aren't winning the Super Bowl for the next 3 years. Just, it's not possible with the way their roster is structured. How did you see that? Did you see this like as a pivot for the Browns philosophically, that like this made the most sense for them? Or does it not matter and they should have just taken that premium player when they had the chance to take him?
Yeah, I liked it and I hated it. And I'll explain that. I liked the trade down. I think this is a good decision. You're not talking about a premium quarterback here. You're talking about Travis Hunter, who is a very fun, unique player and may turn out to be great. He could be an all-pro. And I still wouldn't hate this trade for the Browns because, again, you're right. They're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. This is a roster that needs a massive rebuild because they are so, like, underground on their contracts. Like, they really need to bury things out. Something we've been saying about the Saints for a long time, but I actually believe the Browns would take some action on it. And that's why I don't get the Mason Graham thing, because you invested a ton of money in a 31-year-old edge rusher. Yes, he might be the best defensive player in the league, but then, okay, so you're going to pair him with a really nice defense lineman. I think in theory that's great, but with all the problems that this roster currently has and will have in the next year to 2 years, trade down again. Like, go from 2 to 5 and then go from 5 to wherever you have to go. I don't know what trade deal is out there. It sounded like the Rams were really aggressive in trying to get up into the top 10, but somebody out there would have given you even more assets. And that's where I like to see a team in the Brown situation like double dip and trade down, continue building up your draft assets in 2026, and get the cheap young talent in rounds 2 through 7. So like
Yeah.
Graham, I like Graham a heck of a lot. I just don't get it like in this particular situation.
Yeah, I think I felt like the same way. It was like I think that the ceiling for Travis Hunter is massive. Also, there's never a player that doesn't have risk, but I feel like Travis Hunter's ceiling is pretty massive. I feel like Mason Graham's ceiling is less massive. And I feel like he could be a great player. I don't personally feel like there's that big of a gap between Mason Graham and say obviously like Grant, the other defensive tackle from Michigan, is a different kind of defensive tackle, but someone like Derek Harmon, like I just don't think that there's like a crazy difference there. Like you said, like maybe they could have traded down a little bit more and gotten the position to get some more assets or something like that, but they did pick up the extra first. They picked up a second. We can't really grade this trade for probably 3 or 4 years until we see how all those other assets are distributed and used to rebuild this roster. But probably one of the more fascinating things that happened in the draft, and it may have gotten overshadowed by, I don't know, some other quarterback decisions that were made by this same team that we may talk about in a second here. But I did love what the Browns did in the second round. I think Carson Schlesinger is going to be a really good player. I think he's an ascending player with maybe a little bit of added play strength to his game. Could be a great NFL linebacker. Quinshon Judkins, stud. I love him. I think he's a perfect stylistic replacement for someone like Nick Chubb. And if your offense lacks identity at quarterback, which the Browns does, why not just run it through a player like Judkins while you figure out the rest? So I love those 2 picks in the second for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, Schlesinger, one of my favorite players in this class. He is right away out of the shoot, he is going to be an excellent third down backer, and I think he has the ability to really like develop into a major difference maker as a 3-down player as his career goes on. Like Judkins too, echo everything you said there. Harold Fannin Jr. is really fun because this is a tight end who just finds ways to get open. He's not gonna like wow you on in the athletic testing, but he's always open. He makes plays after he catches the ball, and you already have David Njoku. So is Fannin a player who can learn behind him, and then you get a really scary double tight end set? I think that's a fun calculated risk in the third round.
Yeah. So I mean, Dylan Gabriel, they took Dylan Gabriel real early, and then they took Shedeur Sanders real late. And I don't know like how this is going to play out, but I didn't really understand why they felt the need to take Gabriel as early as they did. And I mean, I was never a Shedeur fan, but like obviously the value of where they got him is incredible, and everything that comes with him is certainly baked in. But what a mess for the Browns, like, because they've got to move on from Watson. They've got a couple options here in the building. And I don't know if you could have like added more drama to your quarterback room than what they did, but there's a chance that this pans out and Shedeur ends up being a great player and no one cares. But it is going to be super fascinating to see how all that transpires. Dylan Sampson is the other player that I had marked here. Is just I didn't love him as much as some people did, but in the fourth, this is a really good value pick. He's more smooth than he is like sudden, but a great locker room guy. And interesting for us as Packers fans, Dylan Sampson comes from the same high school as Eddie Lacy. So I thought that was fun. Running back connection there for Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, Tennessee running back's hard to evaluate because there's never anybody in the box. Yeah. So like their decision making is like we don't know.
It's unnecessary. Yeah.
So the quarterback thing is really goofy. Dylan Gabriel, somebody I thought was like a 4th, 5th round kind of player. Shedeur, I had like a 2nd, 3rd round grade. I didn't really love either of them. I think they're probably better like as career backups. But Shedeur Sanders' comp to me was Geno Smith. And I think maybe he takes kind of a career trajectory, and you just hope that when the spotlight isn't on him and he's not a social media darling and he's the backup quarterback this season, that he continues to put in the work and the effort, because I think he could develop into a really nice starting quarterback in the NFL. I just don't know that there's like a special upside. Gabriel, I don't get, because like I like Dylan Gabriel as a college quarterback, but like there's a little like Josh Heupel to his game, like
Okay.
really good college quarterback.
Yeah.
He can throw the deep ball in college because it doesn't matter if it floats up there. Safeties are going to love playing against Dylan Gabriel in the
Yeah.
preseason. Like
Yeah.
there's just not enough arm strength, in my opinion. And so interesting the way that they put this draft together, and
Yeah.
I think having the future first going forward is really going to help this team. But again, I
Yeah.
thought there was a little work that they could have done. So I like the class. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
second and third round. Outside Gabriel. Yeah,
More fascinating than maybe any other draft class, just to see how it pans out 3-4 years from now, as they really do step into like what is a rebuilding period for them.
I think we could do a whole show on the Browns and
Probably.
be
Yeah.
perfectly happy. So Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round of pick 21, they take defensive lineman Derek Harmon out of Oregon, who you just mentioned, and then in the third
Yep.
round they take running back Caleb Johnson out of Iowa.
Yeah, so I love Derek Harmon, and I think he's going to be awesome. He's powerful enough, but yet incredibly quick, wins with explosiveness and hand technique, which is relatively advanced for where a lot of these defensive tackles come into the league when they're drafted. And so I think the sky is the limit for Derek Harmon there, and getting him at 21. Great value, in my opinion. Man, the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously in an interesting spot, because we found out, I think today, that Aaron Rodgers has officially signed to be the quarterback for this team for 1 year. So I think what's going to be fascinating here is they took Caleb Johnson in the third round, and I think that he's going to be a player that's a great fit with the Steelers, right? Like, they're a big back culture. They want to be able to pound the ball, but Arthur Smith wants to be able to run some of that zone too. So Caleb Johnson, I think, is a great fit there because he's big, but he also ran really well in that zone system at Iowa. So I think he could be a pretty serious bell cow there. And with Aaron Rodgers coming into the picture and needing to do something to just kind of take the pressure off of him having to carry the entire offense, I think that that's going to be a nice pick for them that they got there at 83 in the third round.
Yeah, I think, you take a look, Cam Hayward finally starting to slow down a little bit. And so you see where the Derek Harmon replacement comes into play. But they also have Keanu Benton, who's a really good player, Isaiah Loudermilk. So I think, that's a defensive line that is really cooking with grease. And then you take a look at, TJ Watt is going to be great. Alex Highsmith is going to be really good if he's on the field. Jack Sawyer in the fourth round, really fun to me. Like, I think they found a way to get the most out of Nick Herbig, who looks like a really, really fun third edge rusher. So could Sawyer be like the really solid fourth and be impactful in that rotation? I think this is a like front four, front five, depending on if they're playing base or not. That is super deep, like really, really fun class there. And then also just a quick shout out, Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State. I think he's a really solid player. I am shocked that he didn't get drafted by the Raiders, because his college offensive coordinator is now the coordinator in Vegas. And, to fall in the sixth round, I think that's a fun developmental quarterback, probably a backup, but you could see him, potentially outshining Mason Rudolph at some point down the line, and maybe even competing for that backup spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that Rodgers is there, like, Will Howard is fascinating because he's a 6th round pick. All accounts are that he has really, great intangibles and off the chart character and things like that. So like, he is not a player that I think Aaron Rodgers is going to feel like pressure from as a 6th round pick, but someone that like maybe Rodgers plays a year, maybe he plays 2 for the Steelers. Maybe Howard can sit there and like learn, and like maybe this is one of those players that like he is kind of built like a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, and maybe a couple of years down the road, like maybe they get a steal in someone like Will Howard, who at least is maybe a transitional quarterback, if not a future starter for them. So I liked that landing spot. But like I said, I thought maybe Las Vegas was a little bit more of a logical landing spot, but glad that Will made it to the Steelers there in the 6th round.
Yeah, and what I really like about Howard is he was the guy, like the playmaker at Kansas State, and then transfers to Ohio State and is just kind of the point guard. Get it out to your playmakers. And so I think, to have the ability to adjust to that, and, that's probably what he's going to have to be in the pros if he's going to succeed. I think that's a fun risk to take in the 6th round. So that's the AFC East and North.
Yeah, really fun to go through the AFC. Like you said, like this is so fun to do this. Almost, man, we are getting months removed from the NFL draft at this point, but at the same time to review things that we saw happen. But now that we've forgotten like where all these guys went and how they're going to fit, it's been a really fun conversation to go through all that. So thanks for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show. Watch for our next episode to drop in just the days ahead. We'll continue to drop all of our thoughts on all 32 draft classes. Next up, we're going to finish out the conversation around the AFC with conversations around the AFC South and the AFC West. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have got you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.
Kyle got the insight, Andrew brings the heat. Breaking down the roster every single week. Catch us on the podcast, we coming through your speakers. Top picks for practice squad, we got the seekers. Team dynamics, contracts, and the trades. From the draft day excitement to the accolades. Draft fellows on the track, we gone strong. Analyze the plays, we can't be wrong. From the 40-yard dash to the longest throw. We talking pro ball.